the background screening industry is all about is it's about the people, whether it's, about the people that you work with, the people that you do business with, your clients, but also the candidates that you're screening, because you also have to remember, there's decisions affecting them
Right.
too. So it's definitely a people industry. And, you just got to remember that we're all people, and, it's whatever decisions that you're making could affect someone else. So treat everybody right. That's
Mm.
all. Be kind. Be kind.
Welcome to Behind the Screens, conversations with background screening pros. I'm Les Rosen, your host, and I'm excited to have you here. On this podcast, we chat with the people who know the background screening world inside and out. Executives, industry experts, legal pros, and more. We dive into their personal stories and insights to give you a real look at what's happening behind the scenes. Whether you work in the screening industry or are just curious, Behind the Screens bring you the real, unfiltered conversations from the people who make it all happen. Stick around for stories you won't hear anywhere else. And ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of Behind the Screens, conversations with background pros. And today we have a really interesting background pro who is both a member, I love the term OG, the old guard, been in the background screening world since 1999, but is also in many ways still somewhat mid-career. I mean, still going at it and doing lots of interesting things, heavily involved in PBSA, and I think probably everyone knows him. My pleasure to introduce to the program Mr. Marc Bourne. Marc, welcome.
Hey, thanks, Les. Appreciate you having me on. It's interesting. We've been in this industry for so long, and I know we've had conversations over the years, but it's nice to just get down and sit down and just chat one-on-one here about all things other than background
That's
screening.
right. And for those who follow the program, we strenuously try to avoid any substantive issues. But we don't talk about products or compliance or all the things that you can learn about through PBSA and so forth. But we talk about the people. So let's talk about Marc Bourne. Marc, first of all, we always start with this. Where are you talking to us from today? Where in the world are you located?
Yeah, so I am right outside of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, about 20 minutes north in a town called Bensalem. It's part of Bucks County, Pennsylvania, and it's freezing cold right now, so I'd rather be out there in California where you are.
Well, you see, for me, freezing cold is like in the 60s above.
Yeah,
To me, that's
exactly.
freezing cold. Like, oh my
Exactly.
God, turn on the heat, get a jacket. And so,
Yeah, we're dealing with 6 inches of snow right now and goes down into the teens.
oh
So
my
not a
God, I can't even imagine. Tell us what your current role is. What are you currently doing? What do you like about it? Give us the lowdown.
Yeah, so I am currently the Vice President of Background Screening, Training, and Compliance Services for Workforce QA. They are a consumer reporting agency out of Salt Lake City, Utah, and I was brought on been with them now almost 3 years. It'll be 3 years in April, and they had brought me on to stand up their background screening side of things. So they've always been primarily a drug testing company and wanted to expand their services.
Oh, that's great. And what was your career path? Where you started in the screening industry, as I mentioned in the introduction, in 1999. What was your career path from then to now? How did that all transpire?
It's interesting because I think, like a lot of your guests that come on here, people don't expect to get into the background screening industry. They just kind of happen into it. And I was kind of similar the same way. I always wanted to be a police officer. But as I was, starting out in jobs, I was in loss prevention and security. I realized that there was a whole industry out there that was checking backgrounds. So started out in public records research, actually going to the courthouses. I went to Philadelphia courthouse, Bucks County, went into Delaware, and was actually doing the actual court searches And from there, we decided to become a CRA and also have the wholesale business. And then I'm also still currently a licensed private investigator here in Pennsylvania. So had basically three facets of the company, and it was a family-run company that my mom and I operated for 19 years. We grew that into a national CRA, and it was a good run. So after that, my mom had stepped out of the business. She had passed in 2021, but in 2019, wound up selling off parts of the business. And I went to work for another drug testing company to stand up their background screening line of business. It was formerly known as FS Solutions, which was then bought by Vault, which is just recently purchased by Sterling a couple of years ago. So once made that exit, I'm now here at Workforce QA.
Oh, that's fantastic. So in your career, what's interesting, you've not only actually, been to courts, but you've been involved in drug screen, health, I assume, and then
Yeah.
the CRA side, working, you've supplied CRAs, and now you be a CRA.
Exactly. And I think, it's an interesting aspect to really understand, from a CRA standpoint, a lot of times you're like, well, where's that record? Or why can't we get that, that information? But to really understand the nuances of what court researchers go through day in and day out when they're actually at the courthouse and having to deal with the court clerks and all of those nuances, I think it gives a different perspective on those records
Right.
and what information is actually coming back to the CRA.
Well, I mean, that's great. You can see it, as Joni Mitchell says, through both sides now. So that makes it interesting. You have all of these qualifications that you could apply to any industry. What's your passion about staying in the screening industry? You started off wanting to do one thing, then you developed and you stayed.
It's interesting because I'm actually late diagnosed ADHD, inattentive type, so I'm neurodivergent, and it really explains a lot of things. So I have my hands in, everything, but I think the reason why I stick in the background screening industry is because it is always changing.
Yeah.
Whether it's the regulations or the technology or the access, there's always something new happening. So it keeps my interest, it keeps me hyper focused, and it definitely feeds my ADHD.
Well, ADHD is not always a bad thing. It keeps you going, it keeps your fingers in a lot of
Exactly. It's
pies.
a
So,
superpower.
yeah, exactly. So along the career path, obviously you worked with lots of people. Just quickly, who are a couple of your mentors or influencers in your early career that stand out that you want to give a shout out to?
So I think one of the influencers, and this is probably going to be a surprise, is you, Les. When you talk about pioneers in the industry and kind of having that forethought of where the industry was going, you know, eh, you have to mention Lester Rosen, from your books. And it's just, you had your finger on the pulse. And I think it has definitely made the industry better because of your forethought. So, yeah, you're definitely one of my influencers in the career.
Well, I
I would
appreciate
also
that, but let's get to some real people.
Right. And you can give me the $20 after
Yeah,
the
exactly.
podcast for saying that. But I would also have to say Scott Maloney from Omni Data Retrieval. I've known Scott for a really long time. I did court research for Omni when we were doing public records research. They've been a client, they've been a vendor, they're still a vendor of ours. And Scott and I have gotten really close over the years, and he has always been very open and available for support and just mentorship about you know gaining traction in the industry, personal things. So yeah, Scott Maloney is definitely one of the good guys in the industry.
That's great. And so I had the chance to have Scott on along with two other chairs or past chairs too, so that was really interesting as well. Well, with everything you've been through, I do like to ask, though I will ask you, what's a lesson that has, something that you learned early in your career that has stuck with you that you'd like to share?
I think the most important lesson that I learned early on is that you always have to be growing. You always have to be adapting. Otherwise, you're going to be on the outside looking in. And I think a good example of that, especially, kind of where I started in public records research is when I started out, we were, going to the courthouse, looking at docket books, looking at terminals, and then next thing you know, Pennsylvania's going online. And when most researchers were like, oh crap, we're going to be out of a job, it was, a few of us that got together and said, okay, how do we pivot and how do
Right.
we utilize this to our advantage? And I think that goes pretty much with anything, whether it's your personal life or your professional life, is that you always have to be ready to pivot because you can't nothing stays constant. Everything changes and it's how you adapt to that change is really how you're going to survive or how you're going to be successful or how you can even just stay sane.
Yeah. And it's such a great point. There's been so many times in the screening industry where it felt like the carpet was being pulled out from underneath us. And boom, we turned it into an advantage. So, when the EOC came out in 2012 with the new guidance, a lot of people were going, oh my God. And I said, no, this is great. This makes
Right.
you
Right.
invaluable. Now people need you for compliance. This is a good thing.
Exactly. It's all about the spin. It's all about
Yeah.
adapting. And even when we look at AI now, you hear so many people saying AI is going to replace jobs, AI is going to do this. No, you just have to adapt and
Right.
learn how are you going to utilize AI to your advantage and just keep moving forward.
Yeah, exactly. So, and that's a great point. Always grow. Personally, your personal life, your professional life. Always reading and so forth. So, as you look back on the career, and we'll go through more of your, some more things that you've done. Your role at PBSA. Is there anything that stands out with you? That stands out in your mind, rather, as we call it a proud moment, something that an achievement or accomplishment that brings a smile to your face, and where you get to say, "Yeah, I did that. That was cool."
Yeah, I think for me, I think the proud moments or, achievements that I have, I think is as being a leader is seeing someone that, I've either, supervised or I've mentored and seeing them grow and being able to,
Mm.
grow professionally and achieve and see that I think is my proud moments because I'm very much, whether it's in my personal life or my professional life, it's about giving back and creating change, creating people that we're less you and I are not going to be around in this industry forever, so we need those people to be able to rise up, and I think I just had one of my managers, she's my background screening manager, Elizabeth. She got to attend her first PBSA conference, this last annual conference, and she's been in the industry almost 10 years.
Mm.
So being able to, have people like that be able to get that professional development, take part in the networking, and be able to see them grow, I think that's what it's all about for me.
That's great. As I hear that, the thing that occurs to me is that they're not exactly newbies anymore. They've been in this over 10 years. They're not a newbie. But, with consolidation, some firms are sending less people to PBSA, which is just absolutely the wrong thing to do if you're trying to develop staff and expertise and depth. You got to be sending more people because that's where you make contacts, you get together, you learn things, and I urge people that even if your employer won't send you, go on your own dime. Take
Yeah.
a couple PTO days and just eat it and go.
It's
You won't.
beneficial.
Uh,
Yeah, yeah, it's beneficial. I mean, I think you need that deep bench, you need that growth, and the things that, and I know we'll be touching on it, but the educational offerings and the networking that PBSA offers is just invaluable. It's priceless.
well, talking about PBSA, let's spend a few minutes with that. At kind of a high level, let's start off by describing your involvement in PBSA, then we'll drill down into a few things that I think are particularly interesting.
Yeah, yeah. PBSA has been the organization. I mean, we were around prior to PBSA, and part of that formation, and I think it's such a great organization. I've been on the provider committee. I most recently I've been the chair of the BSCC, which is the accreditation arm of PBSA, and now I'm on the board of directors for PBSA.
So let's break that down a little bit. I mean, people don't realize. I mean, a lot of people do, but how much. Although there's now a lot more staff than PBS had at the beginning, there's still a lot of volunteer time. So tell us about the Background Screening Accreditation Council, and how many your time when you first joined it, and then you were chair, now you're past chair. Describe that to us. I think that's pretty interesting.
Yeah, I feel like the Background Screening Credentialing Council is, a very important part of the organization because that's the council that sets the accreditation standard. That's the standard that shows the best practices for our global organizations. So, our committee meets once a month, goes over all of the audits for the reaccreds, and determines, whether or not an organization should be accredited or not based on auditor findings. One thing to note that I always hear from people is, what does that look like? Do you know the companies that are coming before you? And, we don't. It's a completely blind process. All we see is a random number, and the auditor goes over the report, gives their findings, and then we determine whether or not they get their accreditation.
And if they, yeah, I mean, I don't exactly recall how all this works now, but if there's some deficiency, I mean, because we want people to become accredited, but if there's a deficiency there, they obviously have a chance to say, oh, okay, we missed that, and now here's how we're going to address it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. During the audit process, there's multiple avenues for correcting nonconformities. And then, even if it gets to the board with some nonconformities, then there's a remediation time. And that's all set in the
Right.
accreditation
Yeah.
standard and the P and Ps that, that any member can take a look at. But yeah, there are, multiple times for someone to be able to, to correct that.
Yeah. And how many firms are accredited now, approximately? I mean, just, grabbing a number out of air. I know there's an exact number someplace, but
Geez, I should know that. I should know that, and I don't. I don't know what the
too
last
surprise
number is.
question. I mean, I can't
Yes,
remember, but it's a pretty substantial number that have
it
done it.
is. It is.
Yeah.
But the interesting thing is that even though it is a substantial number, it still isn't the majority of background screening companies, which, I think and this is, not just a plug for the accreditation, but, for any background screening company out there that is not accredited, that's something you should really put on your radar for 2026, because it really is a testament to your professionalism, to your adherence to best practices, and I really think it's another valuable tool for CRAs to have, is that accreditation.
I mean, I recall, even though I'm retired now, that the first question any employer would ask, "Are you accredited?" And if you're not accredited, you're out of the running. I mean, I suppose for smaller employers, it may not be an issue, but I think most CRAs would rather have would like to have increasingly larger clients.
Right, exactly. And even on RFPs, you're seeing it more and more about the accreditation status. And, what I always like to say is, getting accredited doesn't mean that, people are going to be beating down your door, looking to buy your products. But what it does is it levels the playing field. You have a seat at the table,
Yeah.
and you can show how you have consistent screening practices that are in line with the accreditation standard.
Yeah, and it's interesting with accreditation. I mean, we're off on a tangent now, but I mean, accredited firms may do something incorrect. Non-accredited firms may do things perfectly. I mean, so it doesn't necessarily
Right.
translate, but still, if you're accredited, I mean, it tells an employer that you have studied and considered and done things to comply with best standards, and that you're thoughtful about it. You're being professional.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. And I remember from the being, my old firm was in the first group of accredited firms. It was kind of like, in mountaineering, you talk about, a long slog in thin air, kind of like a class one walk. It's not technically hard, but it's just a lot of things you got to pay attention to. I mean, there's no really difficult thing that you can't do. It's just a lot of
Right.
stuff, right?
Right, exactly. It takes a lot of prep. You have to, make sure that you're going clause by clause, to ensure that you have all your ducks in a row. It's
Yeah.
just a tedious process that takes time, but it definitely is achievable so long as, you're doing things right.
Yeah, as long as you want to do it, yeah. And then there's a third party Zoom. I don't know if this is improper. I can mention CRA Zoom, the one I know of.
Oh yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
Derek, good old
yeah,
Derek. Yeah.
yeah. So that gives you a big helping hand. So you're not just
Exactly.
looking at just starting with a blank page. All right. All these, I mean, you still have to do the work. All right, but it
Exactly.
gives you,
Exactly.
it's kind of
Yeah.
like the
Yeah.
roadmap.
Companies
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
companies like Derek with CRA Zoom, they're like any other consultant. They, help you guide you through the process and tell you what you need and get you ready for that accreditation process.
and now, since you're a glutton for punishment, you not only have served as chair of the accreditation, and you were on the committee before that for what, a couple of
Yeah.
years or
Yeah, I've been on there for I believe 4 years. Yeah,
all
yeah.
right. So as if 4 years wasn't enough, your newest gig with PBSA is as a board member.
Yes, yes. It just became a board member in November. Just had our second board meeting. So yeah, I don't know what I'm getting into, but yeah, I'm excited for it. Like I said, it's a great organization and it's all about giving back to an industry that has given me so much.
Well, no good deed goes unpunished. So you now have a 3-year board term, right? If I recall.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Right. And,
Yes.
and 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 I don't think people appreciate that. It's a fair amount of work, being on the board. And
It is. It is. There's a lot of work that is involved. It's not all pomp and circumstance and figureheads. We're getting down to the nitty gritty there.
so as you have at least your monthly meetings, right? There's probably a lot on the agenda, and then you're also a board liaisons to a committee.
Yes, and I was lucky enough to be put back onto the BSCC as the board liaison. So no getting out of that council.
Oh boy! And now with the international councils, that increase your work, or how does that work out?
It's made it more diverse, which is great. And yeah, it definitely is a lot more work because I haven't been on the board prior to having the international councils. But now that we're a global organization, we have to be mindful of our partners, across the globe. So
Right.
yeah, it definitely is. I think we're in exciting times there, to be that leader globally for background screening and tenant screening companies.
Were you on the accreditation committee? Were you involved in the new, if I recall this right, the new international accreditation?
Yes, yes, yeah, yeah. And that again was, an interesting process. And, I think again, to be able to have an accreditation process, not only for the US, but for, global agencies really, really shows that, we really want to be that, best practices, that organization that you can go to really have a good screening procedures, policies, education, networking. I mean, really think about the industry that we're in, to be able to network globally. If I need a criminal researcher, I need a verification in India, I can just go onto the PBSA website and be able to find a member in India. It's thinking about where the organization came from, and our conversations in in Long Beach, and seeing where it is now, it's crazy. It's crazy. I would have never believed we would be at this point.
Well, that's great. You were at the Long Beach conference, right? Yeah.
Yes.
And
Yep.
then
Yep.
and then Brownstein, Florida conferences, and
Yep.
a couple different
Absolutely. Yeah.
locations. Yeah, exactly. Oh
Yes.
boy, yeah, that goes down memory lane a little bit. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Right. So, when you go to a PBSA conference? What's your favorite thing to do? Mine is to go around all the tables and look at the swag, but hey, that's just me. Right.
I know you need it. You need another suitcase just for the swag, right?
Yeah, exactly.
But no, my favorite thing at them, and I think this is for a lot of the members, is it's kind of like old home week. You get to interact with people that that you've known for years, that you don't usually get to see often. So a lot of it is being able to reconnect. But it's also interesting, especially in the last few years. And I guess this is probably showing my age, but you're also seeing that turnover
Right.
in the generational changes of, you have the new generation starting to come up the ranks in the background screening world. So you're starting to see, different individuals participating and leading. So it's interesting to see the changes. But I think, for me, outside of the educational pieces that PBSA puts on, I just love the networking and being able to get all that FaceTime in the exhibitor halls, and just connecting and, getting that face to face discussions.
And it's interesting when we're talking about seeing the new people, or people that may be new to you, but some of them are working in this for 5 or 10 years, so they're pros.
Right.
What's
Right.
your advice to them to get them into roles of leadership and the ability to affect change and the direction of the industry?
Yeah, I think if I had to say, I think it's, be present, try and learn as much as you can about the industry. You alluded to this earlier. It's, if your company isn't paying for, continuing ed, or paying for you to go to PBSA, find other ways to learn about the industry, even if it's getting on LinkedIn and networking with other folks in the industry, just trying to learn all you can, develop those networks. Because I think the one thing about our industry, and we were just discussing this earlier today, is that we're in such a large multi-billion dollar industry,
Right.
but yet our circle is so small.
Right.
And I think that really is important. Networking is really important, because you never know, where you're going to be tomorrow, and who you're going to have to lean on in that circle of colleagues.
Exactly. And the other thing too that came to mind, I think you implicitly said the same thing, is to join a committee. I mean, just
Yes.
find things
Yeah.
you're
Get
interested in,
involved.
and yeah, I mean, even you might meet by phone once a month or whatever it is, but you'll make connections and meet people, and maybe be on a subcommittee and help write something. Who knows? I mean, but it's all about connecting those synapses, basically. Yeah, yeah,
Absolutely. And to your point, that's a really good way. If your company isn't paying for you to go to PBSA and you can't afford PBSA to go to a conference, join a committee. So that way, at least you're involved. You can meet by Zoom and all of that. And it's a really good way of getting that continuing education and being able to stay involved in the organization.
yeah. Oh, that's great. Have you had the chance to go to the mid-years in Washington?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. I love the mid years. Yeah. That the more compliance focused, but yeah, mid years. I generally attend both the mid year and the
That's
annual.
great. And are you able to get up to Capitol Hill or some of the agencies and do
Yes.
the,
Yeah.
yeah,
Advocacy Day, and again, Advocacy Day. That's another opportunity to just learn from your peers and be involved in the change. At the legislative level, really getting in there and being able to see what is going on at that government level.
Yeah, it's all. I mean, it's so much fun. You suit up. I don't know own a suit anymore, but you suit up and you right,
Yeah,
talk
yeah.
to you don't typically talk to a congressperson. Although I have on a couple occasions on Video Day, but
Yeah,
but
a
you know,
few.
yeah, you talk to the staff and you're in their offices and they take notes and you gotta be there. You gotta you don't who I think Tommy Smothers the one said half of life is just or maybe Groucho is just showing up.
Right? Exactly,
Yeah, just being
exactly.
there. Well, this has been a lot of fun to go over a lot of these things you're involved in. Now you're involved in the future. Over now with your being on the board for 3 years, you're full of it, right?
Exactly,
Yeah.
right? Yeah, and see where it takes us. A lot of things with AI happening, and yeah, I think it's gonna be a few interesting years.
Well, you mentioned one of my favorite words earlier. You said pivot. So we're going to pivot right now. Let's pivot away from background screening. When you're not doing your professional career, I assume you're equally energetic about non-background screening things. So tell us about that. What do you do beyond screening? Your
It's
your, your
it's
hobbies and
interesting
so forth that
because
you want to share.
yeah, it's interesting because my wife and I have this conversation all the time about what are my hobbies. So I'm very interested and very passionate about rescue animals. So my wife and I volunteer for two different English Bulldog rescue
Oh,
organizations in our area. So that's one of my passions, but somewhat similar to background screening, I'm also volunteer with the VDOC Society. So I'm a member of the VDOC Society. And what the VDOC Society is it's an organization made up of crime scene expert, whether they are DNA profilers or genetic genealogists, FBI profilers, investigators like me, FBI, all of these different law enforcement professionals. And we meet once a month and we give pro bono support to law enforcement
wow.
agencies in trying to solve their most complex cold case crimes. So every month we fly in a different law enforcement agency that is applied to present their case, and they come to Philadelphia. While we're based in Philadelphia, we're an international organization. So, yeah, that's one of the ways that I give back as well. That's kind of a hobby of mine as well.
Oh, that's fascinating. So I mean, it's like that series on Amazon Prime, Ballard. She's head of the cold case unit.
Right,
Right.
exactly. Exactly, yes.
In the Bosch, universe of detectives. So you guys, well, men and women, you folks, with all these different expertise, what do you do? I mean, someone flies in from a local agency with a case file, and they do a
Yeah.
presentation, and then what happens?
Yeah, so what'll happen is it's generally over lunch. So, cutting chicken off a bone, looking at, some autopsy photos and things like
Well,
that.
sounds more
But
like you're losing your lines, but
right? Yeah, it's definitely not for everybody, but no, the law enforcement agencies will present their case during lunch. We'll kind of ask questions. And then what'll happen after that is our team will get together and decide what resources are needed to help that law enforcement agency. And then we'll put together a smaller group of those resources to, kind of go over the case intimately with that agency and just kind of offer help. So, for example, it might be a small, law enforcement agency that might not have resources to, DNA, capability. So we have, professionals that, do genetic genealogy or that do DNA. They'll offer their services, or there may be something that needs to be reviewed on a polygraph, so we have polygraph experts that'll take another look at the polygraph results. So it's all about connecting the right resources to the agency to try and garner some additional new leads.
and it's fantastic. And I generally, being an old criminal lawyer, don't ask questions where I don't know the answer. But in a particular moment that you can or able to share where you felt, wow, this is really working.
Yeah, so one of the, kind of the differentiators between our organization and some of the other organizations out there, there's other organizations out there that are a little bit more public. we're very private. We're very, we keep everything very confidential. We generally don't, seek publicity or anything unless the agency allows us to. But, one case that we are allowed to talk about is the boy in the box. That was a case out of Philadelphia back in 1957 where a 5-year-old boy was found dead in a box. And for years and years, they couldn't put a name to him. And he became known as the America's Unknown Child. And we had, people that had donated headstones and a burial plot. And, it was our mission to put a name to this boy's legacy. And luckily, about 3 years ago, we were able to, through our resources, our genetic genealogists, were able to identify that boy and have some closure there. It is still an open homicide investigation, but at least we now have a name for that boy.
Oh, congratulations. That's fantastic work. Wow. So that's pretty time consuming. In addition
Yes.
to everything you'll do, and tell us about the English Bulldog. What kind of bulldog
Yeah.
is an English? How is the English Bulldog different than an American Bulldog or a French Bulldog?
Oh, you know the English bulldogs. They're the wrinkly faces, and the American bulldogs don't have the wrinkles, but the English bulldogs, they're the mascot for the Marines. And yeah, we've had two English bulldogs over the years. We had one for 13 years. We had her as a puppy. She passed away in 2019. And then during COVID, we rescued another English bulldog, Dora. And she was a little older when we got her. So she just passed away in 2023. And then, they just have the best personalities. So yeah, that's just they're our dogs. So we love their little wrinkly faces and roly-poly snorts and all of that
And
stuff.
kind of
So
their low center of gravity. And
exactly.
I was thinking of Winston. I didn't know that they were the Marine mascot. I forgot that. I was associated them with Winston Churchill, but
Yes, Winston Churchill. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
oh, that's great. Well, all right, we're going to play fun facts. Share something about you that people may not know or suspect. Keep in mind that anyone who listens and sees you at the next conference will harass you about it unmercifully. But give us a fun fact from your
Oh,
secret
wow.
life.
I don't even know where to begin. Fun facts. Fun fact, here's one. Fun fact is when I was going into my teens, I actually was a ventriloquist.
Oh,
And
yeah.
learned ventriloquism. I performed at birthday parties and performed at the library and school talent shows and all of that. So that's one little fun fact.
And who's the dummy?
Exactly, right? Yeah, yeah. I'm still trying to figure that one out.
Do you still have your dummy someplace? Or
Oh yeah, yeah,
all
yeah,
right.
yeah.
Are you allowed to take it out and display it in the house, or does it have to stay?
Oh no, I haven't done it in years. So my brother is a magician, and my nephew started learning ventriloquism. So I was just able a few months ago to pass down one of my dummies to him. So that was nice.
And for the record, you said dummy, not gummy. I just want to make sure we were.
Right?
If the
Yes.
sound, if
Yeah.
the sound was clear. All right.
Exactly.
Well, you're on the PBSA board. It sounds to me, I've heard so many fun facts and people with hobbies, and there really should be a PBSA talent show at the next meeting. That might even
That
get
would be really fun.
all right.
I couldn't imagine all the different talents
I
that we
could
want to
almost-
see and that we don't want to see.
All right. That could almost get me onto an airplane if I thought there was going to be a PBSA talent show where people would sign up and display whatever their particular talent is. All right, that would be great.
That would be fun.
So yeah, there you go. You can bring that to your proposal to the next board meeting, and just don't mention I mentioned this yet. It's all right.
Yeah, right. Exactly. I'll definitely say that you mentioned it.
No, God, don't do that. All right, all right. So, Mark, you've been around a while, which I say as a good thing, and you're going to be around for a lot longer. So you have a lot of miles left and a long way to go with just starting a 3-year board. But what's your, we talked about this a little bit, but what's your advice to newcomers to the profession? I mean, we kind of covered this a little bit before, but I'm not sure we exhausted it. Someone who is either thinking of getting into screening or they may be in it, just starting off as maybe they're a verifier or a criminal record clerk, or maybe they've been in for a few years. What would be your advice if they wanted to, enhance and advance their career?
Yeah, I think, one of the things too is, embrace it. Embrace it. There are so many different specialties and niches within background screening. If you start out, let's just say you're starting out as a verifier and you're tired of, picking up that phone or trying to verify employment, you know, ask to learn something else. Something else might, pique your interest. Learn crim, see what criminal's all about. Or if you're very analytical, do you like compliance or, QA? There's so many specialties that I think if you like the industry, but you really want to learn, you really need to, try and learn each one
Right.
of those things throughout, even public records research. I mean, there's so many opportunities within the industry that you just got to find what you like and just, go for it. But try and learn all there is to know.
Yeah.
There's so many opportunities.
Right, and there's products and retention and marketing. I mean, and each product is a specialty,
Oh,
and
absolutely. Yeah.
partnerships, and I mean, just so much to. It's just mind-boggling. How much
It is.
there is
And,
to
and
do.
it's, there's definitely something for everyone. It's just learning, what is your strength? What do you like to do? And, kind of following that path.
Well, Mark, I appreciate your time. We kept you here longer than we normally do with people, but we just didn't want to cut anything off. So,
Oh,
be,
this has
be
been great, Les.
oh, I appreciate it. Well, before we conclude, let me give you the last word. Any closing thoughts or comments or anything you want to share or anything you left out? Mark, the floor is yours.
Listen, I think we covered it all. This has been great. I really love your podcast. I've watched a lot of these interviews and it's great. It's all about connecting with the people, and I think that also goes back to what the background screening industry is all about. Is it's about the people. Whether it's, about the people that you work with, the people that you do business with, your clients, but also the candidates that that you're screening, because you also have to remember, there's decisions affecting them
Right.
too. So it's definitely a people industry, and you just got to remember that we're all people, and it's whatever decisions that you're making could affect someone else. So treat everybody right. That's all. Be kind. Be kind.
Well, that's great. Be everyone right and be kind. And I really appreciate your comments about the people we're screening, because a lot of times people don't really stop and think, well, they do, but we have to keep in mind that our clients under the FCRA are actually the consumers we're screening. We
Absolutely.
obviously the employers who pay CREs are clients, but the real clients or co-clients are applicants and consumers,
Yep.
and they're entitled
Absolutely.
to every consideration and anything we can do for them. So I think it's a great
Yeah.
reminder.
Absolutely.
So this has been great, Mark. I appreciate it. It's been a pleasure spending the time with you. Ladies and gentlemen, it's been another episode of Behind the Screens today, featuring our good friend Marc Bourne, longtime industry veteran, now newly minted board member. Program, of course, is brought to you, if I didn't mention this before, by Pre-Employment Directory, put out by Barry Nixon. So we certainly appreciate Barry and his publications acting as a platinum sponsor. So thanks again to the Pre-Employment Directory. And from the podcast Behind the Screens, thanks to Marc Bourne. Thanks to everyone for listening, and we'll see you next time. Thanks. All right, that was yet another wonderful conversation with a background screening pro. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to hit subscribe so you never miss an update. And hey, if you got a moment, we'd love for you to leave us a review. It really helps get the word out. For more info or to catch up on past episodes, or to make suggestions or to suggest possible future guests, head over to our website. Once again, this is your host, Les Rosen, and it's been a pleasure to bring you another episode. See you on the next episode. Thanks.